Hello, I am Peter Okwoche. Welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories. Cyclone Idai. 2 weeks on, food is still failing to reach families in need. We'll be asking why.
The water is receding now, but then there are communities that have still not been reached.
As investigations into the deadly Ethiopian Airlines crash continue, another similarity with last year's Lion Air crash in Indonesia is revealed. Pope Francis heads to Morocco for a 2-day visit that will focus on inter-religious communication and cooperation. Also on the program, more views, more money. How YouTube is helping African singers find a following and make a living.
And concerts.
I'd like to say music is right now one of the biggest exports out of Africa. The internet is making the world a small place.
And in sport, who will be crowned winner of the African Super Cup, currently taking place for the first time outside the continent? Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We start in Mozambique, where the number of confirmed cholera cases following Cyclone Idai has climbed sharply from 5 to 138 in Beira and could rise further. Authorities are preparing to roll out a mass vaccination campaign to stem the spread of the deadly disease. More than 750 people died in the disaster, and tens of thousands of survivors are still waiting for help 2 weeks after large parts of southern Africa were hit. The BBC's senior Africa correspondent Anne Soy reports from the region surrounding Beira.
Utter desperation. Food has just been dropped off, but it wasn't enough. These people are displaced, hungry, and increasingly angry. Antonia left empty-handed. She lost everything in the cyclone.
I had a big farm of rice, maize, and peanuts, but all of it was swept away.
Charities deliver aid however they can. This food is being taken to a community that hasn't been reached before. Word has gone out that help is finally on the way. Here, you have to show up to get something. Eliza's granddaughter was only a week old when disaster struck.
We
hid in the ceiling. That's how we survived. Anyone who fell in the water died.
But many are still unreached. Both bridges into this community were washed away. The people here improvise.
The water is receding now, but then there are communities that have still not been reached. We're going to find one of them now. It's completely cut off, more than 2 weeks later, and they've still not received any help.
The local school is now a shelter. I'm told 160 people live here. They try and salvage their crops, but hopes are fading. The harvest is rotting, leaving them without food and seeds. And now, more fears as a child suspected to have cholera dies. Unless conditions improve quickly, more lives could be lost. Anne Soy, BBC News, Beira.
Well, let's get more on this now from Mozambique's High Commissioner to the UK, Mr. Philip Chidumo. Your Excellency, this seems to be getting worse. We're hearing about what the international aid agencies are doing. What about your government?
Well, you know the government has been there ever since this event started 15 days ago. So we haven't abandoned our people. We have been there before. And we continue to be in Beira and beyond until the emergency is over. The problem is that what happened with Idai was very big indeed. It's biblical, actually, and they could not have prepared anybody.
Did your government underestimate it? There were warnings, you know, in the weeks leading up to the cyclone. Did your government underestimate it?
No, quite to the contrary. 2 days prior to the event, the Council of Ministers, the Cabinet, did meet and offered specific warning, which was read by the Speaker of the government, telling people in the path of the cyclone to be careful to take all precautionary measures to defend themselves. But you know, even with that, we could not foresee the impact which is resulting from the 200+ kilometers of winds and the heavy rain that ensued.
Now, there were huge floods in Mozambique in the year 2000, 19 years ago. Did the government learn anything? Did the country learn any lessons from that that could have mitigated against the, you know, the amount of damage this time around?
Yeah, the 2000 floods did affect mainly the southern part of Mozambique, they were not as a result of a cyclone of this one. But of course, lessons have been learned. There are things that we did before that, the 2000 floods, which we are no longer doing, including, you know, measures that are taken by local governments and the central government to encourage people and sometimes to prevent people from building in areas which are prone to that. So, but the problem is that Mozambique is flat. It's flat. And you can try whatever you try, but you might not be in a position to fully implement your own plan if the geography is like that of Beira, where there's no mountain in the neighborhoods. You have the city of Beira itself with 500,000+ people, and the outskirts, which is, so where do you put those people? It is not an issue of preparedness. It's an issue of, it goes beyond that. But certainly there are things we can improve. Yes, we can improve, and we will improve upon the lessons that we have learned.
Okay, are you worried that, you know, as the weeks go by, you know, the spotlight will be taken away from this region? You know, how prepared for that are you? Because something will happen in another part of the world and the international community could move there.
Yeah, I would love to launch an appeal today as I speak to you, to all friends of Mozambique, to remember that this disaster, this tragedy, is not a one-time event. It is not. It doesn't end with declaration of the end of search and rescue mission, which we have already made. It will be as crucial as important for the international community to assist the government of Mozambique in making sure that the 1.8 million people that we believe are ultimately affected, of whom 800 actually directly affected, do receive the necessary support in order for them to be again on themselves and to make sure that the economy of Beira, which is central of Mozambique, and the economy of Manica and all of the regions that have been affected can return to normalcy. If abandonment were to take place once the headline is over, then it would look like the efforts that the international community and the government have deployed would have been in vain.
Mr. Chidumo, thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated. Your time is much appreciated. Thank you very much. The Mozambican High Commissioner to the UK, Philip Chidumo, speaking to me here on Focus in Africa. Now, 1 million chanting, banner-waving protesters have marched through the Algerian capital, Algiers, for a 6th Friday in succession to demand the removal of President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Today's protests come just days after the country's powerful military called for Mr. Bouteflika to step down. Some demonstrators also called the entire political elite to go. Key allies have also deserted the 82-year-old head of state, who has rarely been seen in public since suffering a stroke in 2013 and now faces the biggest crisis of his 20-year rule. Let's take a quick look now at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. The authorities in Burundi have banned all journalists from working for the BBC and the Voice of America in the country. The National Council of Communication also outlawed any journalist providing any kind of information to the broadcasters. It described a BBC documentary broadcast last year about killings by the security forces in a secret house in the capital, Bujumbura, as a lie. President Donald Trump has extended an immigration program that protects Liberians in the U.S. from deportation. It happened just 3 days before it was set to expire. Mr. Trump last year ordered an end to deferred enforcement departures status, which started in 1991 for people fleeing civil war in Liberia. It also allowed the immigrants to work. Officials investigating a deadly plane crash in Ethiopia this month have found that an anti-stall system was activated before the crash. According to media reports, the investigation is still underway and the cause of the crash, which killed 157 people, is yet to be confirmed. But a lawsuit has been filed by one of the victims' families. Now, Michelle Fleury has been following developments from New York for us, and she joins us now. Michelle, what more do we know about this latest report? It hasn't been released yet, has it?
No, I mean, these are very much initial conclusions drawn by American safety experts, government safety experts who've been studying data from the black box of the Ethiopia plane. And the conclusions thus far appear to be what has already been widely speculated, and that is that the plane's anti-stall or MCAS system automatically turned on before the crash that killed 157 people. The thinking is at the moment is that this is what also happened in the Lion Air crash that happened in Indonesia last October. Now, it's worth pointing out these are preliminary findings being reported in the Wall Street Journal from the black box recorders. They are subject to revisions, and of course we're also expecting a preliminary report from Ethiopian authorities in the coming days.
And there's also the issue of a lawsuit filed by one of the families of the deceased.
Well, look, I think with all of this focus on Boeing's anti-stall system, it shines a pretty harsh spotlight on the plane maker's manufacturing process. So, unsurprisingly, you're starting to see it become the focus of lawsuits. In this case, it's the first one so far from a family of one of the deceased victims, someone called Jackson Musoni, and they're saying that the 737 MAX had a defectively designed control system. Of course, if this is found to be the cause of this accident, similar to Lion Air, legal experts warn the payouts could be substantially more than to those families of victims in the previous crash.
Michelle Fleury speaking to me live there from New York. Thank you very much. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwocha. Still to come, Mimi has the sports. We'll look at the East African dominance in the World Cross Country Championship ahead of the race this weekend. I'm Peter Okwocha. The top story this hour. Food is still failing to reach families affected by Cyclone Idai 2 weeks on. Charities say confirmed cholera cases following the storm have climbed sharply and could rise further. Pope Francis will be in Morocco this Saturday on a 2-day visit that will focus on interreligious dialogue and immigration. Up to 10,000 people are expected to attend a papal mass in the capital, Rabat, in the Muslim-majority country. Moroccan converts from Islam to Christianity hope it will shed light on their situation. Muna Ba reports from the Moroccan capital, Rabat.
Saint-Pierre's church in the Moroccan capital, Rabat, is busier than usual. There is an air of excitement as congregants prepare for Pope Francis' visit. Over 30,000 Catholics live in the Sunni Muslim-majority North African country. They consist mostly of sub-Saharan African migrants and a smaller percentage of European expatriates. The Moroccan authorities are working closely with local churches to support sub-Saharan migrants. As part of his visit, the Pope will meet with some of them, in addition to priests and imams, to promote inter-religious dialogue. But there is another group of Christians consisting of local converts from Islam. They do not attend sermons in the dozens of churches spread across the country. They prefer to practice their religion discreetly in what they call home churches. Many decline to speak to us, fearing backlash from their families and friends, who often do not know they had converted. But one man who converted to Christianity 10 years ago agreed to speak on condition of anonymity.
We hope to be able to marry in the church. We also hope that our children will be allowed to learn Christianity at school instead of another religion that is different from theirs.
But the Moroccan authorities say religious freedom is already inscribed in the constitution.
The Constitution stipulates that they can practice their religion freely. In his capacity as commander of the faithful, the king guarantees freedom of religion without restrictions. However, the law prohibits tempting Moroccans away from their religion, or what is described under the law as shaking Muslims' faith.
There are no official figures about Moroccans who converted to Christianity, but it is estimated that they number in the thousands. They say that they face discrimination in reality and hope the Pope's visit will help them enjoy religious freedom. For now, they keep a low profile in the hope that one day they will finally come out of the shadows and into the light. Munaba, BBC News, Rabat.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sports. Mimi?
Thank you very much, Peter. The African Super Cup is just finishing in the next few minutes. It's in the Qatari capital of Doha. Champions League winners Esperance of Tunisia took on the winners of the Confederation Cup, Raja Casablanca of Morocco. Raja are currently leading 2-1 as it stands. It's the first time that it was hosted outside the continent. Remember, Qatar will be holding the 2022 World Cup, and today's match was part of their preparations to train its staff and its facilities ahead of the tournament. And the English Premier League is back this weekend after the international break. One of the standout fixtures is Liverpool, who host Spurs at Anfield on Sunday. It's the last run as they resume their title race. They're currently at the top of the table with 2 points separating them from Manchester City. But one player who was given time off during the period was Egypt's Mohamed Salah. Manager Jurgen Klopp said it did him some good.
Oh, 100%. Of course, if you gain freshness in that period, in that time, that's clear. The boys, if they have a day off, they never have a day off. Actually, they always train, but just individual, and that's of course. But it's not the highest intensity, so that helps for different reasons. Of course, not only for Mo, it was for the others as well. Like this was not involved in international duties, so no, all good.
Let's move on now from the English Premier League. Cameroon goalkeeper Andre Onana has signed a one-year extension with Ajax Amsterdam. It will keep him at the club until June 2022. Onana has become his country's first-choice keeper and played an important role in helping them qualify for this year's Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. And in tennis, South Africa's Kevin Anderson was knocked out on Thursday of the quarterfinal of the Miami Tennis Open by Roger Federer in straight sets, 6-love, 6-4. Federer won the first 8 games. For Anderson, he hadn't lost a set 6-love since October 2016. To athletics, this weekend sees the World Cross Country Championships in Denmark. It takes place every 2 years, and this time around, there's a new innovative design for the race. There are changes to the course as those competing will be running up a slope roof of a museum. It will also include hills and muddy paths, as well as going through a beer tent. Defending champion in Kenya's Jeffrey Kamworor is going for a hat trick, and his fellow countrywoman Helen Obiri is aiming for a first title. Since the early 80s, East Africa has dominated the race, as BBC Sport Africa's Lynn Wachira explains.
Cross-country running, thought of by many as the toughest race out there. Tougher than track and field, and yes, even tougher than a marathon. And it's steeped in history with the World Cross-Country Championships nearing a half-century of existence.
I remember when we were also in primary school and all that, we had the basic, that's what we started first. And since then, it became a way of life. This is something that it says about the foundation of my career.
Sebastian Coe, the head of athletics global body, the IAAF, has repeatedly talked of the importance of the wild cross-country in building an athlete's career and believes there's need to fight for the event.
I don't think enough younger coaches realise how important cross-country is. And I think that in turn has had an impact on the number of people at international level doing the sport.
The hope is that by returning the sport to the Olympics, where it last featured in 1924, cross-country will be able to regain the stature it once had.
I would love to see cross-country back in the Olympic programme, and maybe even something, you know, thinking out of the box for a moment, why not including it in the Winter Olympic programme? Because you would then broaden the Olympic programme to African nations that are not actually feeling a great preparatorial interest.
And that's all the sport. Back to you, Peter.
Many thanks, Mimi. Thank you very much. Now, with more than 400 hours of new content uploaded onto YouTube every minute, this is how they're cashing in on the world's largest on-demand music audience. Emmeline Nsingi Nkosi has the story.
CD sales and concerts used to be the main source of income for African artists. But there's a new king in town. The web has empowered the continent's artists. From streaming to sharing, artists are now able to touch their fans and, of course, cash in like never before. In Africa, the platform that has had more impact than any other is YouTube. With its ability to command billions of eyeballs, everyone has a chance to make it big. Nigerian superstar Mr. Yeezy is one of those leading the charge.
You know, this is the best time to be making music as an African artist because there's so much demand. I'd like to say music is right now one of the biggest exports out of Africa. The internet is making the world a small place. And unfortunately, you know, in majority of the parts of Africa, there's no respect for intellectual property. It seems easier to distribute your music outside of Africa than in Africa, which is kind of silly. And this is because there's no infrastructure. And this is what we have to be serious about. For now, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a mess. I have a dream where I build a full ecosystem of the music, from live to distribution to publishing, the full ecosystem, and that's been taking a lot of investment.
So what is Mr. Yeezy doing to make money from music? Well, the principle is simple. Number one, an artist's YouTube channel needs to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in the past year before being able to be monetized. Number two, they then need to create an AdSense account which allows them to get paid a chunk of the cash earned by YouTube for each advert that is played before or during their video. So far, so obvious. Number three, Mr. Yeezy is going an extra step. He actually collaborates with Google Ads to create commercials that push his videos to be seen by more people, and that in turn earns him more money from the site. But what about lesser-known artists? Joe Shello, the Senior Vice President of A&R at Universal Music Central, explains.
This digitalization, it has enabled artists or has empowered them, but it doesn't mean that because you can do so, the success is guaranteed. I would pay Mr. Yeezy a whole lot of respect that he has come to the position to have that kind of a business model paying off. But
interesting, maybe I should give it a try, or maybe not. That's it on Focus on Africa from me, Peter Okwoche, and the rest of the team. Thanks for watching.